I've got it on the PowerPoint this morning as well. I'm wanting to do a very short little series of messages on building great families, and so I'm going to do about 4 messages. And I want to take this reading from Psalm 78, 1-7. It's talking about passing on the baton to the next generation. So Psalm 78, 1-7. O my people, hear my teaching. Listen to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter hidden things from of old. What we have heard and known, what our ancestors have told us. We will not hide them from their children. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power and the wonders he has done. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children, so that the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born. And they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put their trust in God and would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands. Great verses, those verses. Malcolm Gladwell is a writer who has written a number of books on kind of social behaviour. One of his most famous book, I guess, is the book called The Tipping Point. They're in the local library. I find his books really fascinating. And the one I've got out just now is called Outliers. And the subtitle is The Story of Success. And he looks at the whole issue of what makes a successful individual, or what makes a successful family. Very fascinating kind of stuff. And he starts off his book by telling a story of a town in Italy called Rosetta. And it's a town back in the 1980s and 1880s where people struggled just to survive. You know, from generation to generation they worked hard and they just struggled to survive. So in 1882, 11 men in this village decided that they were going to travel to the New World, try and find a new life. So they travelled to America, so impressed by it that they wrote back to Rosetta and said, you've got to come to the New World. So over generations, hundreds of people from this town or this place in Italy immigrated to America. And so many of them, they congregated together in Pennsylvania, and they built a town. And guess what they called it? Rosetta. You know, they called this town Rosetta. And all these Italians, it was an Italian town in Pennsylvania. And so it stayed very much an Italian kind of place. 1959, a doctor discovered that in this town they virtually had no heart disease. Nobody died of heart attack in this town. And in the 1950s and 60s in America, they didn't have all these pills for anti-cholesterol stuff and all the rest of it. And so the major cause of death in America amongst men under 65 was heart attacks. And they discovered in this town nobody had died of a heart attack under 65, virtually no one. So of course the doctors were amazed by this. So the doctors came in and tested everybody. The sociologists were brought in to discover how on earth or why on earth were these people so healthy. And as they did all these studies on these people, they discovered that there were no suicides in this town, there was no alcoholism in the town, there was no drug addiction, no peptic ulcers in the town. Now these people were healthy. In fact, they estimate that between 30 to 35%, the death rate from all causes in this town was 30 to 35% lower than in the general American population. In other words, these people were dying of old age. That's what they were dying of. And so they asked this question, what on earth was the difference in this town that caused them to be so healthy? They had all these studies. Was it diet? Did they have all these Italian olive oils and all the rest of it, And the conclusion was, no, it wasn't diet. Was it all their hard work and exercise and all the rest of it? No, it wasn't hard work and all that sort of stuff. Was it genetics? No, it wasn't genetics. And finally came down to discover one issue that had caused them to be so healthy. And it was this. It was the strength of their community. Amazing. Blew all kind of theories of the medical world out the window. What they discovered as they looked at this town, you know, a lot of the places had 3 generations in one house. They walked down the street and they all had to stop and have a cup of coffee together. They went all to church together and they worshipped together. And with the strength of the community in this town, that had created a healthy environment. They'd brought such strong social kind of relationships and social structures from Italy with them, and it actually protected them from the stresses of our world. Now, when the people discovered all this, all the sociologists and all that, they had a very hard time trying to convince the medical world that actually strong, healthy relationships can make you healthy. Why? Because the whole thinking, even today in our world, is that me as an individual, I dictate what happens to me. You know, it's my hard work, it's my diet, it's my exercise, it's everything to do with me that actually makes me healthy or unhealthy. And these people are saying, actually, it's not just about the individual. It's about us together. It's about what happens in your families that can actually determine how healthy and well you are as an individual. It's what goes on in our families or in our social structures and our communities together that can dictate hugely how healthy that we are. You know. So, in other words, if we want to build good, healthy kind of environment, we need healthy families, healthy relationships, strong, stable kind of relationships and families. And so it's interesting that in our Western world today, we have lost the strong, stable communities that used to exist in the past. And what's happening now is that we are in danger of losing the stability and the strength and protection of family life. We are all aware, I'm sure, that family life is now in our Western world facing a crisis. 50% of marriages bust up. 40% of children born in our country are born outside marriage. You know, we are facing a huge crisis in our families because we're under such stress. And all of us know what that means, that when marriages bust up and kids born outside marriage, it means increasing loneliness in children. It means increase in low self-esteem and depression in children. It means increase early sexual activity in children, increase sexual violence amongst children, increase broken marriages of our children, increased problems with alcoholism and drug, and you go on and on and on, and an increase in issues that are problems and health issues. Now, I am very aware that I am not who I am and what I do and what I can do and all the rest, just because of the decisions I've made in my life. I have been so shaped by my family. I've been so shaped by the culture that my dad and mum brought me up in. The culture that they brought me up in. And they were shaped by their mum and dad. And they were shaped by their mum and dad. Married people have a saying, we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. Is that right? Is it? I asked Massey what the word was and I've forgotten it already, but it's tu puna, is it? Stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. Now, I'm aware that many of you here came from families where you knew stability, security, a stable family life where there's a lot of fun and good things happen in it. And you've been blessed all your life because of your family and what you experienced in it. And many of you had the baton of faith passed on to you from your family. And now you're passing that on to your family. And many of you here look back and you're just so grateful to God. And the older I get, the more grateful I am, actually. You know, for how I was shaped